Dr. Emma Rodriguez looked through the window of Harmony Base at the thick jungle outside. The trees were tall and dark green, and strange sounds came from them all day and night. She had been on planet Kepler 438c for 6 months, studying the animals that lived here. But there was one type of animal that worried her more than all the others. The RAVENCLAWE. Walked to her computer and looked at the pictures on the screen. The Ravenclaw were 12 feet tall and looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had sharp claws that could cut through metal. Their teeth were long and pointed like knives. Their eyes were yellow and always looked hungry. "Emma, come look at this," called Ben Carter from across the room. Ben studied the water animals on the planet. He was looking at his own computer screen with a worried face. Emma walked over to Ben. "What did you find?" "More evidence that the Ravenclaw are getting closer to our base," Ben said. He pointed at the screen. "Look at these tracks near the river. They're fresh, maybe from yesterday." Emma felt her stomach tighten with fear. The Ravenclaw were the top hunters on this planet. Nothing could fight them and win. They had been hunting for millions of years, and they were very good at it. "We need to tell Captain Davis," Emma said. They found Captain Roy Davis in the security room. He was a big man with short gray hair who had been a soldier for many years. He was checking the base's weapons and shields. "Captain, we found more." "Ravenclaw tracks," Ben said. "They're getting bolder." Roy looked up from his work. "How close?" "Less than a mile from the base," Emma said. "They're watching us." Roy nodded. "I know. I've seen movement in the trees. They're smart hunters. They study their prey before they attack." Lisa Park walked into the room. She was the team's expert on alien cultures. She tried to understand how alien species thought and acted. "Maybe we should try to talk to them again," she said. Roy shook his head. "Lisa, we've tried that 5 times. Every time we send a message or try to meet them, they just get more aggressive. They don't want to talk. They want to eat us." Emma knew Roy was right. The Ravenclaw had never tried to communicate with any other species. They were hunters, and everything else was either food or competition. The humans were clearly food. "But there has to be a way," Lisa said. "They're intelligent. They use tools and work together in groups. Surely they can understand that we don't want to fight." "Intelligence doesn't mean they want peace," Roy said. "Lions are intelligent too, but they still hunt zebras." Emma sat down at the table. She was tired of being afraid all the time. The research team had come to this planet to study its amazing ecosystem. The plants and animals here were unlike anything on Earth, but the Ravenclaw made it almost impossible to do their work safely. "What if we moved the base?" Ben suggested. "Found somewhere farther from their territory? This whole planet is their territory," Roy said. "There are Ravenclaw packs everywhere. Moving won't help." Emma looked at the monitor that showed the area around their base. The jungle was thick and green, full of life. Somewhere out there, the Ravenclaw were watching. Them, planning, waiting. "Tell me about their social structure again," Emma said to Lisa. Lisa pulled up her notes. "They live in packs of 8 to 12 individuals. Each pack has a leader called a prime hunter. The prime hunter makes all the decisions for the group. They're very loyal to their pack, but they fight with other packs for territory and food." "Do they have any rituals? Any behaviors that aren't about hunting?" Emma asked. Lisa thought for a moment. "Not really. Everything they do is related to finding food, protecting their territory, or raising their young. They don't seem to have art or music or anything like that." Emma felt frustrated. How could they communicate with creatures that only cared about hunting? Outside, the jungle was getting dark. Nighttime was when the Ravenclaw were most active. The base's lights came on automatically, creating a small circle of safety in the darkness. "We should get some sleep," Roy said. "I'll take first watch." But Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, listening to the sounds from the jungle. Strange. Calls and roars echoed through the trees. Somewhere out there, the Ravenclaw were moving through their territory. Emma thought about her grandmother, who had always said that food brought people together. "There's no problem that can't be solved over a good meal," her grandmother used to say, but how could you share a meal with creatures that wanted to eat you? The next morning brought bad news. The base's weather sensors detected a massive storm approaching. It would hit in 6 hours and last for 2 days. The storm would be too strong for their shelter. "We need to find better cover," Roy said, looking at the weather data. "The base won't survive winds that strong." Ben pointed to his geological survey. "There are cave systems about 3 miles east. They should be strong enough to protect us." "Those caves are in Ravenclaw territory," Lisa said. "Everything is Ravenclaw territory," Roy replied. "At least in the caves we won't get blown away." They packed their emergency supplies quickly. Food, water, medical supplies, and basic equipment. The storm was getting closer, and they could already feel the wind getting stronger. As they left the base, Emma looked back at their home for the past 6 months. She hoped they would be able to return after the storm passed. The walk to the caves was tense. Every sound from the jungle made them jump. Roy led the way with his weapon ready. Ben and Lisa carried the supplies. Emma brought her scientific equipment, hoping she might still be able to work during the storm. The caves were bigger than they expected. The entrance was wide enough for their whole team, and the main chamber went deep into the rock. It would definitely protect them from the storm. "This will work," Roy said. "We can set up camp in the back chamber." They were just finishing setting up their temporary shelter when Ben noticed something that made his blood freeze. "Emma," he whispered, "look at the cave walls." Emma shined her flashlight on the stone walls. There were scratch marks everywhere, deep gouges in the rock made by something with very sharp claws. The marks were fresh. "This is a Ravenclaw nesting site," Lisa said quietly. Outside the cave, the storm was starting. Rain poured down, and the wind howled through the trees. They couldn't leave now, even if they wanted to. Emma heard a sound from deep in the cave, a low growling that made her heart race with fear. Yellow eyes appeared in the darkness, reflecting their flashlight beams. The Ravenclaw had come home, and they had found uninvited guests. The Ravenclaw emerged from the deeper parts of the cave like shadows coming to life. There were 6 of them, each one 12 feet tall, with scales that looked black in the dim light. Their claws scraped against the stone floor as they moved. Leader was the biggest one. His scales had white scars across them, telling the story of many battles. His yellow eyes stared at the humans with the cold focus of a perfect hunter. This had to be the prime hunter that Lisa had described. "Nobody move," Captain Roy Davis whispered. His hand was on his weapon, but Emma could see that he knew it wouldn't help much against 6 Ravenclaw in a closed cave. The prime hunter stepped closer. His head moved from side to side as he studied the humans. He was deciding which one to kill first. Emma's mind raced. In a few seconds, they would all be dead. The Ravenclaw would tear them apart with those terrible claws. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "There's no problem that can't be solved over a good meal." It was a crazy idea. It would probably get them killed even faster, but it was the only idea she had. "Ben," Emma said very quietly, "get out the camping stove." "What?" Ben whispered back. "Get out the cooking equipment. Now." Roy looked at her like she had lost her mind. "Emma, this is not the time for—" "Trust me," Emma said. She slowly reached for her backpack and pulled out one of their emergency food packages. It was dehydrated meat that would taste much better if it was cooked properly. The prime hunter watched her every movement. His pack was spread out behind him, ready to attack. But something about Emma's calm movements seemed to confuse him. Ben understood what Emma was trying to do. His hands shook as he set up the small camping stove. The sound of the gas igniting made all the Ravenclaw tense, but they didn't attack. Emma opened the food package and added water to it. The smell of the rehydrating meat began to fill the cave. She had studied the local plants for months, and she knew which ones were safe. She pulled some herbs from her collection and added them to the mixture. "Emma, what are you doing?" Lisa asked in a tiny voice. "Cooking dinner," Emma said. She tried to keep her voice steady, but her heart was beating so fast she could hardly breathe. The prime hunter took another step closer. He was close enough now that Emma could smell his breath and see the old blood stains on his claws. But something strange was happening. Instead of attacking, he was sniffing the air. The smell of cooking food was something the Ravenclaw had never experienced before. They ate their prey raw, right after they killed it. The idea of changing food with heat and plants was completely new to them. Emma stirred the mixture as it cooked. The aroma grew stronger, mixing the smell of meat with the herbs she had added. She had chosen herbs that would smell good to carnivores, hoping that the Ravenclaw's hunting instincts would tell them this food was safe. The prime hunter's behavior was changing. His body was still ready to attack, but his head was tilted to one side, like he was trying to understand what he was seeing. The other Ravenclaw were looking at their leader, waiting for his signal to attack. When the food was ready, Emma did. The bravest thing she had ever done in her life. She took some of the cooked meat and held it out toward the prime hunter. "Emma, no," Roy said. But Emma stepped forward. The massive Ravenclaw could kill her with one swipe of his claws, but she kept walking until she was close enough to touch him. "Try it," she said softly. The prime hunter stared at the offered food. Every instinct he had told him that these creatures were prey, not friends. But the smell of the cooked meat was making him curious in a way he had never felt before. Slowly, carefully, he reached out with one clawed hand and took the piece of meat from Emma's palm. He sniffed it first, then put it in his mouth. The reaction was immediate. The prime hunter's eyes widened with surprise. He had never tasted anything like this before. The cooking process had changed the texture and flavor of the meat in ways that his species had never imagined possible. He made a sound that was almost like a purr. The other Ravenclaw looked confused. Their leader was supposed to kill these intruders, not make happy sounds at them. Emma quickly prepared more portions and offered them to the other Ravenclaw. One by one, they tried the cooked food. Each one had the same reaction of surprise and pleasure. Ben was watching in amazement. "Emma, I think it's working." Lisa was taking notes as fast as she could. "This is incredible. Look at their body language. They're relaxing." The tension in the cave was slowly disappearing. The Ravenclaw were still dangerous, but they were no longer focused on hunting. They were focused on the strange new experience of eating cooked food. Emma sat down on the cave floor and started preparing more food. She showed the Ravenclaw how she added the herbs and how the cooking process worked. They watched with the intense focus they usually saved for tracking prey. Prime Hunter sat down across from Emma. This close, she could see that his scars told the story of a lifetime of battles. But right now, he didn't look like a killer. He looked like someone experiencing something wonderful for the first time. "Ben, can you help me with more food?" Emma asked. Ben nodded and started preparing another batch. Roy was still holding his weapon, but even he was beginning to relax. Lisa was trying to communicate with the Ravenclaw, using simple gestures. As they cooked and shared more food, something amazing happened. The humans and the Ravenclaw began to interact without fear. The aliens were still clearly dangerous predators, but they were also curious and intelligent. Emma showed the prime hunter how to season the meat with different herbs. He tried each combination carefully, his face showing surprise at each new flavor. The concept of improving food was revolutionary to his species. One of the younger Ravenclaw brought some meat from their own stores. It was fresh kill from their recent hunt. Emma cooked it using their methods, and the results amazed the aliens even more. "They're learning," Lisa whispered to Emma. "Look how they're watching every step of the process." The storm outside was getting stronger, but inside the cave, something incredible was happening. Natural enemies were sharing a meal together, and both sides were discovering that there was more to life than just survival. Hunter tried to speak to Emma. His voice was deep and rough, but she could hear that he was trying to communicate. Lisa worked with her translation software, trying to understand the alien language. "I think he's asking about the cooking process," Lisa said. "He wants to know how we learned to do this." Emma tried to explain using gestures and simple words. She showed how heat changed the meat and how plants could add flavor. The Ravenclaw listened with the same intensity they used when learning new hunting techniques. As the evening continued, more Ravenclaw arrived at the cave they had come to shelter from the storm, but they found something they never expected. Their pack leader was sitting with prey animals, sharing food and learning new things. The newcomers were aggressive at first, but the prime hunter stopped them. He showed them the cooked food and demonstrated the cooking process that Emma had taught him. Soon, the entire pack was involved in the meal. Emma realized that she was witnessing something that had never happened before in the galaxy. Two completely different species were bonding over food, finding common ground in the simple act of eating together. "This is going to change everything," she told Ben quietly. Ben nodded, watching as one of the younger Ravenclaw tried to copy Emma's cooking technique. "I never imagined they would be interested in anything besides hunting." Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the cave, humans and apex predators were learning that sometimes the best hunts end not with death, but with dinner. The storm lasted 2 days. By the time it ended, the cave had become something neither humans nor Ravenclaw had ever experienced before. A place where natural enemies lived together in peace. Emma woke up on the second morning to find the prime hunter carefully arranging pieces of meat near the cooking fire. He was trying to copy what he had seen her do, but his large claws made it difficult to handle the small pieces. "Here, let me help," Emma said, moving to sit beside him. The massive predator could have killed her instantly, but instead he watched carefully as she showed him how to cut the meat into smaller pieces. His concentration was intense, like he was learning the most important hunting technique of his life. Lisa Park had been busy during the storm. She had figured out how to communicate with the Ravenclaw, using a combination of their language, gestures, and pictures. The prime hunter's name was Scarthick, which meant one who survives in their language. "Emma, I've learned something important," Lisa said. "The Ravenclaw are having problems finding enough food. The climate on their planet has been changing, and many of their usual prey animals have disappeared." This explained why the Ravenclaw had been so aggressive toward the humans. They weren't just natural predators. They were hungry predators whose traditional food sources were failing. Ben Carter had been experimenting with different ways to cook the local plants and animals. He discovered that many things the Ravenclaw thought were inedible could actually be quite nutritious when prepared properly. "Look at this." Ben showed Emma a plant that the Ravenclaw had always ignored. "When you cook it this way, it becomes a good source of protein." They could eat this instead of having to hunt large animals all the time. Captain Roy Davis was still cautious, but even he was beginning to see the value of their new alliance. "These creatures know this planet better than our best surveys," he told Emma. "They can show us things about this world that we would never discover on our own." The real breakthrough came when Scarthick's youngest pack member showed interest in the cooking process. The young Ravenclaw was called Quickfang. and he had a natural talent for understanding how different ingredients work together. Emma spent hours teaching Quickfang the basics of cooking. A young alien learned quickly, and soon he was creating his own combinations of flavors. His excitement was obvious, even to someone who didn't speak his language. "This is remarkable," Lisa said, watching Quickfang experiment with different herbs. "He's not just copying what we do. He's being creative." Scarthick watched his young pack member with pride. Emma could see that the Prime Hunter was beginning to understand that humans could teach his people new ways to survive, not just through hunting, but through knowledge. The other Ravenclaw in the pack were also learning. They practiced cutting meat, mixing ingredients, and controlling the cooking fire. What had started as curiosity was becoming genuine interest in mastering these new skills. "Emma," Ben said quietly, "look at how they're working together." The Ravenclaw were naturally good at cooperation from their pack hunting, but now they were using those same skills for cooking. They divided tasks, shared ingredients, and helped each other learn new techniques. When the storm finally ended, neither the humans nor the Ravenclaw wanted to leave the cave. They had discovered something that neither species had ever experienced: friendship across the species barrier, but they couldn't stay in the cave forever. The humans needed to return to their base, and the Ravenclaw had to return to their territory. Emma worried that once they separated, everything would go back to the way it was before. Scarthick seemed to understand her concern. Through Lisa's translation, he told Emma that his pack wanted to continue learning about cooking. He asked if the humans would be willing to teach other Ravenclaw packs. "That could be dangerous," Roy warned. "Not all Ravenclaw may be as open to new ideas as Scarthick's pack." But Emma was excited by the possibility. "Roy, this could change everything. If we can share cooking knowledge with the Ravenclaw, we might be able to end the conflict between our species." Lisa was already thinking about the bigger picture. This could be the beginning of the first true partnership between humans and apex predators. We could learn so much from each other. They decided to return to the human base, but with Scarthick's pack as escorts and guests. It would be the first time Ravenclaw had ever visited a human settlement for peaceful purposes. Journey back to Harmony Base was unlike any trip Emma had ever taken. Instead of hiding from the jungle's predators, they were traveling with them. Scarthick's pack knew every path through the forest, every water source, and every danger to avoid. "This is incredible," Ben said as they walked. "We're seeing parts of the planet we never knew existed." The Ravenclaw showed them plants that were safe to eat, water sources that were clean, and places where dangerous animals lived. In just a few hours, the humans learned more about surviving on the planet than they had in 6 months of study. When they reached Harmony Base, Emma faced a new challenge: how to explain to the other humans that she was bringing apex predators home for dinner. "Emma, this is crazy," said Dr. Tom Phillips, one of the other researchers who had stayed at the base during the storm. "Those things could kill us all." "They could," Emma agreed, "but they won't. They're our friends now." It took time and patience, but gradually the other humans at the base began to accept the Ravenclaw. The cooking demonstrations helped a lot. When people saw the mighty predators carefully seasoning meat and tending cooking fires, it was hard to think of them as mindless killers. The real test came that evening when Emma organized the first formal dinner party between humans and Ravenclaw at the base. She set up tables outside, under the stars, and prepared a feast using both human and Ravenclaw ingredients. Scarthick and his pack arrived, dressed in their finest hunting gear, treating the dinner as an important ceremony. The humans had also dressed up, understanding that this was a historic moment. "Before we eat," Emma said, standing up to address both species, "I want to say something. A week ago, we were enemies. Tonight, we are friends." This happened because we were willing to share the most basic thing we all need: food. Lisa translated her words into the Ravenclaw language. Scarthick stood up and spoke in response. His deep voice carried clearly in the evening air. He says that his people have learned something important, Lisa translated. He says that strength comes not just from hunting, but from sharing knowledge with others. The dinner was a success beyond Emma's wildest dreams. Humans and Ravenclaw sat together, sharing stories through Lisa's translations. The aliens told hunting tales, while the humans talked about their homes on Earth and their work on the planet. Quickfang had prepared a special dish using techniques Emma had taught him, but with ingredients only the Ravenclaw knew about. When the humans tasted it, they were amazed by the complex flavors. "This is better than anything we could make on our own," Ben admitted as the evening progressed. Emma realized that they had achieved something that no human had ever done before. They had turned apex predators into dinner companions, and in doing so, they had opened the door to a new kind of relationship between species. But their success would soon face its biggest test. Word of the Human Ravenclaw Alliance was spreading across the planet, and not all Ravenclaw were happy about it. News of the Human Ravenclaw dinner parties spread quickly through the jungle. Within a week, other Ravenclaw packs were arriving at Harmony Base. Curious about these strange creatures who improved their food, Emma found herself hosting cooking lessons for groups of 12-foot-tall predators. It was surreal, but it was working. Each new pack that learned to cook became less aggressive and more interested in cooperation. "Emma, look at this," Ben Carter said, showing her his latest data. "The hunting pressure on the local wildlife has dropped by 60% since we started the cooking programs. The Ravenclaw are learning to eat plants and smaller animals instead of only hunting the big predators." This was exactly what Emma had hoped for. By teaching the Ravenclaw to cook, they were also teaching them to be more efficient with their food sources. Instead of needing to kill large prey every few days, they could make smaller amounts of food last longer. Scarthick had become the unofficial ambassador between his species and the humans. He spent most of his time at the base now, learning new recipes and teaching other Ravenclaw what he had learned. Scarthick wants to know if you can teach his people how to grow food instead of just hunting it. Lisa Park translated during one of their evening conversations. Emma was excited by this idea. Agriculture? That would change their entire society. He says his people are tired of always being hungry. The old ways aren't working anymore. Captain Roy Davis had been watching these developments with growing concern. "Emma, we're changing their entire culture. Are we sure this is the right thing to do?" "They're asking us to help them change," Emma replied. "They can see that their old ways aren't sustainable. If we don't help them adapt, they'll starve." But not all Ravenclaw were happy with these changes. Bloodclaw, the leader of a rival pack from the Eastern Territories, saw the alliance with humans as a sign of weakness. He believed that Ravenclaw should remain pure hunters, not learn tricks from prey animals. "Bloodclaw is gathering supporters," Scarthick warned Emma through Lisa's translation. "He says I have forgotten what it means to be Ravenclaw." Emma felt a chill of fear. She had seen how deadly the Ravenclaw could be when they were angry. If Bloodclaw convinced other packs to oppose the alliance, it could lead to a war that would destroy everything they had built. "How many packs support him?" Roy asked. "Maybe half," Scarthick admitted. "Many Ravenclaw still believe that cooperation with other species is weakness." Emma knew they had to do something to prove that the alliance made both species stronger, not weaker. She had an idea, but it would be dangerous. "What if we invited Bloodclaw to a feast?" she suggested. "Let him see what we've accomplished together." Roy shook his head. "Emma, he wants to kill us. Inviting him to dinner seems like a bad idea. But what if it works?" What if he sees that cooking makes food better and cooperation makes life better? Lisa was intrigued by the idea. It could work. Food has been our most successful way to communicate with the Ravenclaw. They decided to send an invitation to Bloodclaw through the traditional Ravenclaw challenge system. Instead of challenging him to combat, they challenged him to a feast. It was something that had never been done before in Ravenclaw history. Bloodclaw's response came quickly. He would come to their feast, but he would bring his entire pack of elite hunters. If the humans could not prove their worth through this challenge, he would kill them all and destroy the Alliance. No pressure, Ben muttered as they prepared for the most important dinner party in human history. Emma spent 3 days planning the menu. She wanted to showcase everything they had learned about combining human cooking techniques with Ravenclaw ingredients. Quickfind helped her create dishes that would appeal to traditional Ravenclaw tastes while demonstrating the power of cooking. The day of the feast arrived with tension thick in the air. Bloodclaw and his pack approached Harmony Base like an army preparing for battle. They were the largest Ravenclaw Emma had ever seen. Covered in battle scars and carrying traditional hunting weapons, Bloodclaw himself was terrifying. His scales were darker than night, and his yellow eyes burned with contempt for the humans. When he spoke, his voice was like the growl of an earthquake. "So these are the weak creatures who have corrupted Scarthic's pack," Lisa translated his words. "They look like they would barely make a decent snack." Emma tried to stay calm, but her hands were shaking. This alien could tear her apart with his bare claws, and he clearly wanted to do exactly that. "Welcome, Bloodclaw," she said through Lisa's translation. "We are honored by your presence. Please join us for the feast." Bloodclaw looked at the prepared tables with disgust. "Ravenclaw do not sit at tables like domesticated animals. We eat standing, like the hunters we are." "Then we will eat standing," Emma said quickly. She had expected this and had prepared. Food that could be eaten without sitting down. The feast began with everyone standing around the cooking fires. Emma and her team prepared the food while Bloodclaw's pack watched with suspicion. The traditional Ravenclaw expected the humans to serve them raw meat, as was proper for prey animals. Instead, Emma began cooking. The aroma of seasoned meat filled the air, and she saw some of Bloodclaw's warriors sniffing curiously despite themselves. Quickfang joined Emma at the cooking fire. The young Ravenclaw had become an expert cook, and his skills impressed even the traditional warriors. When he offered the first prepared dish to Bloodclaw, the war leader was forced to make a choice. Refusing the food would be an insult in Ravenclaw culture, but accepting it would mean acknowledging that the humans had something valuable to offer. Bloodclaw took the food and ate it quickly. Expecting to taste nothing special, his expression changed immediately. The combination of flavors was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The meat was tender and flavorful in ways that raw food could never be. "This is different," he admitted grudgingly. Emma prepared more dishes, each one showcasing a different aspect of cooking. She showed how spices could preserve meat for longer periods. She demonstrated how cooking could make tough plants edible and nutritious. She proved that preparation could turn a small amount of food into a satisfying meal. Bloodclaw's pack was becoming interested despite themselves. These warriors had spent their entire lives hunting and fighting, but they had never considered that food could be improved through intelligence and skill. The turning point came when Emma showed them how to make soup. She took bones and scraps that the Ravenclaw would normally throw away and turned them into a rich, nutritious broth. The idea that they could get more food from the same hunt amazed the practical-minded hunters. "You make food from nothing," one of Bloodclaw's warriors said in wonder. "Not from nothing," Emma explained. "From things you already had, but didn't know how to use." Bloodclaw was struggling with what he was seeing. His entire worldview was based on the idea that strength came from hunting and fighting. But these weak humans were showing his people how to be more efficient hunters, how to waste less food, and how to survive better. "Why do you teach us this?" he demanded. "What do you gain from making us stronger?" Emma thought carefully about her answer. "Because we are stronger when we work together than when we fight each other. You know this planet better than we ever could. We know techniques that could help your people survive. Together, we can both thrive." Scarthick stepped forward and spoke to Bloodclaw in their own language. Lisa translated for the humans. He's telling Bloodclaw about the agricultural experiments, how they're learning to grow food instead of just hunting it. Bloodclaw listened with growing amazement. The idea that food could be created instead of just taken was revolutionary to his species. "Show me," Bloodclaw demanded. Emma led the entire group to the experimental garden behind the base. It was small, but it demonstrated the basic principles of farming. Plants growing in organized rows, carefully tended and watered. "This food grows without hunting?" Bloodclaw asked. "It grows because of work and knowledge," Emma explained. "Your people are smart and strong. You could learn to do this too." For the first time since arriving, Bloodclaw looked uncertain. The evidence before him contradicted everything he believed about how the world worked. "If we learn these techniques," he said slowly, "my people will not need to hunt as much. There will be more food for everyone." "Exactly," Emma said. Bloodclaw stood in silence for a long time, looking at the garden and thinking about what it meant. Finally, he turned to Scarthick and spoke in their language. "He wants to learn," Lisa translated with excitement. "He's asking Scarthick to teach his pack how to cook and grow food." Emma felt relief wash over her. They had done it. They had convinced the most traditional Ravenclaw leader that cooperation was strength, not weakness. The feast continued late into the night, but now it was a celebration instead of a challenge. Bloodclaw's warriors were learning to cook alongside Scarthick's pack. The humans were teaching anyone who wanted to learn. "This changes everything," Ben said to Emma as they watched Ravenclaw warriors carefully seasoning meat. "We're not just making friends with one pack anymore. We're changing their entire civilization." Emma nodded, watching Bloodclaw try to flip meat with a cooking tool designed for human hands. "And they're changing us too. We're learning as much from them as they are from us." The alliance was no longer. 6 months later, Emma Rodriguez stood on a hilltop overlooking the most remarkable sight in the galaxy. Below her stretched the first joint human Ravenclaw settlement, where members of both species lived and worked together in harmony. The settlement was called Unity Gardens, and it represented everything they had achieved since that first dinner in the cave. Humans and Ravenclaw had built it together, combining human technology with Ravenclaw knowledge of the local environment. "Emma, come see this," called Ben Carter from the central plaza. He was standing next to a massive cooking area where dozens of Ravenclaw were preparing food for the evening feast. Emma walked down the hill, passing gardens where humans